Welcome to episode 46 of Shane Talks 99. And I know I've started a lot of episodes saying how I'm going to try to keep this episode short. And then, like in typical Shane fashion, I go off on a bunch of tangents and I talk about side stories and I try to explain why these films from 1999 mean so much to me and how they changed and affected cinema post 1999 and like all the positive stuff that these movies from 1999 have done. Well, that's not going to be this episode. And I can't sit here and tell you it's going to be a short episode because I do still have seven movies to talk about, but like I'm not going to talk a lot about all of them. So I'm going to try to keep this shorter than, there was one week that had, two movies that came out and I spent an hour talking about them because I loved them so much. So like it will not be anywhere near that long. I will promise you that. But it's also probably not going to be a short episode because again, so I got seven things to go over, and here's 100% full disclosure. Got to be honest about this. I did not rewatch any of these seven movies this past week. So quite a few of them I have not seen since 1999. Um, like I said, full disclosure, I'm in the middle of two other projects that are kind of a little more important to me, and the idea of taking time to try to find the time to watch seven movies that all came out on the same weekend. I just couldn't do it. I didn't feel like I wanted to do it. I know that I did not enjoy a lot of these movies this week, so I didn't really feel the need to waste my time with that. So a lot of my comments are going to be pretty short about these movies. Let's start getting through and getting to them. So when trying to figure out how I was going to organize the movies this week to talk about, I just decided we got seven movies that all came out. Let's go with the least successful at the box office up to the most successful at the box office. So, box office order of the weekend of October 22nd, 1999 is how we're going to talk about these movies. And starting in 24th place at the box office, and this isn't really super fair because this was an indie flick that was honestly pretty good. It's a movie called Boys Don't Cry. It only showed on 39 screens this opening weekend, and it grossed a total of $307,000. I saw this movie at Castleton Arts, and like this is a tough movie. Like this is a tough movie for a lot of reasons, not only just story and content, but like just it's a tough movie because I, as a 19-year-old white male, had a lot of trouble like connecting with the movie. And while I can appreciate its importance in cinema and how like a lot of movies in 1999 were very important for cinema in general, like this was a film about a trans person, and like first of all, making that statement, this was decades ahead of time. Like this isn't like Hollywood and the world is right now, where granted, there's still a lot of transphobia shit going on in the world, but like it wasn't as talked about, or it wasn't even close to being as talked about as it is on a daily basis right now. So like in 1999, I wasn't super comfortable with it being, the subject of a film. But in 2019, the Library of Congress selected this movie for preservation in the National Film Registry. So, like, despite how it didn't connect with me, it's obviously an important enough movie that connected with enough people that, the Library of Congress saw it as super important. And I understand how important this movie can be, but at the same time, this is very much it's not necessarily a movie about a trans person figuring out who they are. They already know who they are. This is much more a movie about transphobia and how fucking terrible people can be as far as that goes. So like again, it's a real tough movie to watch. It's a real tough content. And I think like sort of like why I think it's tough is not necessarily that I have a problem with the content. It's that like I have a problem with the idea of these people not being accepting of somebody. Like Peter Skarsgård in this movie it is terrifying. Like I I think it is a really good performance by him, but like I think more infuriating is the fact that I have to admit people like this out there in the world that would go so far as to be violent against somebody for finding out, that they're a trans person. So like it's a real difficult subject matter to watch. And it was really difficult for me as a 19-year-old white straight male to be able to connect with the movie. But at the same time, I can completely understand and appreciate why it's such a powerful story that needs to be told. And it's just a tragic story. And like the movie itself is done really, really well. Our two leads in the movie are played by Hilary Swank and Chloe Savini. I already mentioned Peter Sarsgaard as an absolute terror in this movie. He's a huge piece of shit as a character. Brendan Sexton the third is the other antagonist in this movie. Also, just a really horrible human and individual, and like writer director Kimberly Pierce, she read an article in the Village Voice about the real story that this is based on. And up until like this week, when I was doing research on this, I honestly never knew that this was based on a true story. I thought this was just, you know, you know, filmmaking, storytelling, like whatever. But Kimberly Pierce read about this story. She was an NYU film student, I believe. She ended up traveling to Nebraska to create this like short film documentary based on like the real life events that happened. I think the trial was going on for these two guys that killed this trans kid. Um, and so I believe she covered that in her documentary. After the documentary was done in the mid 90s, she got the rights to be able to turn it into a feature film. And I mean, this film played the Venice Film Festival, the Toronto Film Festival, the New York Film Festival, won a bunch of awards, including Hilary Swank won the Academy Award for Best Actress for a movie that opened in 28th position its opening weekend. So like there's obviously something to say about the power of the storytelling of this movie. Yeah, just again, it was very tough for me to connect with, but I still very much appreciate and understand how powerful and important this was to film in general, not just 1999. Next movie, coming in at 18th spot at the box office. It played on 309 screens. It brought in $488,000. Is a movie called Body Shots. You haven't heard of Body Shots, have you? I don't think very many people on the planet have heard of the movie Body Shots. And to be completely honest, I didn't even see this movie in the theaters. In the year 2000, I was working at a video store when this movie came out on VHS tape. That's when I took it home and watched it. And then a couple of years ago during COVID, when everything was on lockdown and I had a lot of time to watch movies, it was one that I came across as like, oh, I should revisit this. I was going through a period of watching a lot of late 90s, early 2000s teen, young adult movies to just try to kind of see how they played out with me again, 20 plus years later. So I did rewatch Body Shots, and like it's not a terrible movie, but it's also not a good movie. Like it's a movie that like it has a cast that I really like, and I really enjoy a lot of the narrative choices that are made in this movie. But like, so you've got a movie that starts at the end, like it opens up on some characters, and we see a female character accuse another character of raping her. And so, it's got a great way to open the movie. It's got a what the fuck's going on moment at the beginning of this film. And then we rewind 24 hours to watch a group of not necessarily even friends, but just a group of people who all kind of intersect, very Love Actually like where, their paths all cross throughout the course of the movie, all going out, essentially raving at a club, that night. And, drugs are done, drinking's done. It's a very Rashomon style movie. Like the way the narrative plays out is we see a lot of different events from that night from different characters' points of view. And it gives us that unreliable narrator element to the movie. Like we don't really know what parts of the story are true, and we as the audience have to piece it together because everybody is telling things from their perspective. And like there are literal moments in this movie where the characters break the fourth wall and talk to the audience as if they're attempting to justify or explain what they're being a part of, what they're seeing, what's going on, the situation they're in, the choices they make. Like it's not a bad concept. I just feel like it's a really poorly executed script and a waste of a lot of really good actors that I like. Sean Patrick Flannery and Jerry O'Connell are our male leads in this movie. Amanda Peet and Tara Reid are our female leads. We've got side characters in Ron Livingston and Emily Proctor. Like has a great cast and it's got a great concept. And I just wish it would have worked out better than it did. But like it's not like the worst movie you're ever gonna see. It's watchable. It's not cringy or anything like that. But like I like the narrative structure. I just wish it could have been executed with a better like plot and script. Third movie this week, coming in 15th place at the box office with just over $1 million. It was shown on 1,214 screens. Is a movie called Crazy in Alabama. This was Antonio Banderas' directorial debut. He's only ever directed two films in his lifetime, this being the first one. In 1999, I hated this movie. I have never rewatched this movie. I have no interest in rewatching this movie. What I do remember about this movie is it involves Melanie Griffith, who, side note, was married to Antonio Banderas at the time this film was being made. She plays a character that in her hometown in Alabama, there's a lot of like this racist stuff going on. Film set in the 60s, just to kind of put that into perspective. Um, in the 60s, she is an abused housewife, so she decides to murder her husband. She cuts off his head and puts his head in a hat box and decides to drive across the country on her way to Hollywood. She has some stops along the way and some shit goes on in her life along the way. But then for some reason back in Alabama, we also see all this racist stuff that's going on. Like Meatloaf plays a cop, Meatloaf, who was also in Fight Club a couple of weeks ago, another 1999 film for Meatloaf. Um, he's this murderous town sheriff who like kills a black kid. And like I just truth be told, I don't enjoy seeing Meatloaf play this character. I remember being really upset about it. Again, coming off of a couple of weeks ago, I just watched him play Bob in Fight Club. So Melanie Griffith's character is going across town with her dead husband's head, and then there's all this other murder, racist stuff going on in Alabama, and I like legit don't understand why these are two things going on in the same movie at the same time. Like it's just kind of all over the place, and like following her character who's going out to be a Hollywood star, who then like gets caught with her husband's severed head, like and then the third act does get her back to Alabama where she ends up going on trial, but then it's like she gets away with it because of the abuse, because she was abused. And like, I don't know, like maybe the whole point of the movie is to piss people off about like how corrupt and like messed up our system is, like our law enforcement system and our legal system, and like just how everything can be manipulated and corrupted. Like I don't know. I just know this was my jam. I didn't enjoy this movie. I didn't enjoy anything about this movie. Not fun or I don't recommend it in any way. In eighth place this weekend, we have a movie that brought in $4.4 million after it was shown on 2,234 screens. It's a movie called Three to Tango. Three to Tango starred Nev Campbell, who I still was on a huge mega crush. I'm still to this day still on a huge mega crush of Nev Campbell, just because she was in the Scream franchise and The Craft, and like absolutely fell in love with her. Like I didn't watch a lot of Party of Five, but I watched enough of Party of Five to get a crush on her. Like I was excited to see her in a rom-com movie. That wouldn't last very long, but movie also starred Matthew Perry, who I love from Friends. Also Dylan McDermott is in this movie as kind of the third, main star in the movie. Sadly, this movie was a huge disappointment. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't love it the way that I expected I was going to. Again, I was very high on Nev Campbell and Matthew Perry, potentially doing some rom-com stuff together, and there was no enjoyment to this movie at all. Oliver Platt is also in this movie. He plays a gay character, and due to his business relationship with Matthew Perry, the plot revolves around everybody thinking that Matthew Perry is gay. So there's all kinds of homophobic and gay jokes throughout the entire movie as he's trying to win over Nev Campbell, who is actually Dylan McDermott's mistress. And so it's just all kinds of this ridiculous stuff going on that just lots of gay humor, or like lots of attempted gay humor, but like they didn't land with me. And like I did some reading this week about like how this film was like received and whatnot, and it turns out that a lot of people found this movie super offensive. I don't remember it being offensive. I just remember it not being funny. But apparently, like the gay humor was super offensive to some people. So, and like, I mean, this was stuff that was written back in the '90s. This isn't like me looking up people now because everybody's offended by everything now. So, like, but I just want to. This isn't people who. I mean, I'm sure people now going back and revisiting this movie would hate it even more than the stuff that I read from '99 about it. So, I don't know. It was not the best example of like '90s humor. Like and again, like I'm not condoning the gay jokes or the gay humor or anything and like at this, but like I definitely guarantee that it would not play well today with how offended, people get about everything. So didn't like it then. I had no interest in going back and rewatching it. Our next movie coming in seventh place at the box office is a movie called Bats. Yeah, you heard me right. Bats. A 1999 horror film that attempts to make bats, thousands of bats, the killer antagonist of the film. This film opened on 2,540 screens. I don't know why. It should have been direct to video. It somehow made $4.7 million in 3 days, which is great for the fact that it only had a $5 million budget. It literally basically covered its budget in the opening weekend, which I guess was something that was far more common to do back in the 90s is release really crappy movies. I mean, we haven't covered there's been a few crappy movies we've covered here in 1999, but there haven't been very many. But like, despite how much I don't like this movie, I guess it wasn't a financial failure. They obviously did not spend a lot of money on the budget for the cast of this movie, which is fine. Like I understand that's how like low budget horror movies get made, but like they had a cast that I like most of. Like it has Lou Diamond Phillips in it. It has Dinah Meyer in it. It has Leone from Cool Runnings in it. And then Bob Gunton is in it. Movie like that's a decent cast. I guess just in 1999, none of them were demanding huge salaries, so they were able to keep this, cheap. And by cheap, I mean direct to video level cheap. Like this is the same year that we got the movie Ravenous, which was garbage with a good cast that should have been direct to video. Oh my God. So yeah. The plot of this movie involves genetically altered bats who are made to be super smart. And it's honestly super dumb that anybody ever greenlit this concept as like, let's do for bats what birds did for birds. Let's make them terrifying by making them super smart to the point where when we catch a bat and we put a tracker on it to try to find where all the bats are hiding at, the other bats know it and they kill the bat. Like what? Like what? I it's dumb. It's really dumb. It's not worth your time. You probably haven't even heard of bats. It had a cool poster. Like it had a very like terror, like a very dark and like purples on like and like. But no, don't waste your time with bats. Bats is dumb. In fourth place this weekend was an art house film that I saw at Castleton Arts. It is called Bringing Out the Dead, and it stars Nicolas Cage, Ving Rhames, and John Goodman, and it is directed by Martin Scorsese. It played on 1,936 screens and opened to an opening weekend of $6.1 million. And I mean, this movie, on top of the people that I just named, it boasts like a Scorsese level cast. Like this also had Patricia Arquette in it, who just a couple of weeks ago we were talking about in Stigmata. It also has Tom Sizemore, Cliff Curtis, Mark Anthony, Michael K. Williams. Like lots of great actors were involved in this movie. The performances in this movie were not the problem. The problem was just how bizarre everything in this movie tried to be. Like the film involves Nicolas Cage playing a paramedic who, months before the film starts, was unable to save this girl's life. So he is now haunted by visions of this dead girl. The film really tries to deal with his mental capacity and how he deals with his inability to save this girl's life, how it's constantly affecting him, making him insomniac. Like the dead girl is used for some attempts at horror in the movie, which the movie is honestly just like a really bad trip anyway for a lot of the camera work and a lot of the weird stuff that goes on in the movie. She's used for some jump scares from time to time. Um, it's all a very mental healthy movie. Like probably something that maybe nowadays would be more relevant than I think I found it back then. But like it's definitely all about how his brain is dealing with the trauma and the guilt that he feels from not being able to save this girl's life. Um, we follow his character over 3 straight nights when he can't sleep and he's working his overnights as a paramedic and like he just crosses paths with a lot of bizarre groups of people that he's trying to save, people who he eventually does save. Like kind of the point of the first 2 nights is the fact that he loses more people that he can't save and like how that's really messing with his brain again. He does eventually finally save somebody on the third night, kind of giving him some closure and some ability to go do like wrap up some other loose ends that we've seen throughout the movie. It's really kind of a bizarre look on drugs and insomnia and how they like have an effect on Nicolas Cage's character. And like the final scene of the movie where he finally is able to lay down and fall asleep is one of the like happiest moments in the movie because I literally know that that means this movie is over. I I don't know. Like in 1999, like I tried to be an art house lover. Like I spent a lot of time at Castles and Arts watching movies that I normally wouldn't have gone out of my way to watch. I was a very mainstream kid in the 90s. Um, I tried, man. I wanted to like this movie. I've always been a huge Nic Cage fan and everything he's done, even all the crap that he does now. I try to find ways to enjoy Nic Cage being Nic Cage, and sometimes he makes it really tough. Finally, of the seven films that were released this weekend, we get one good movie and like a really good movie. And I highly recommend this movie. The number one movie this weekend, it beat out Fight Club, it beat out Double Jeopardy, was a movie called The Best Man. And I really, really like this movie. And if you know me at all and you've seen this movie, you'll understand all the reasons why I like it. Our main character is an author. The plot of this film is very similar to the movie Beautiful Girls that I really like. It's very similar to the TV show October Road that I really like. It's about an author who uses his youthful experiences with his friends as a plot to write a book, and the book becomes super mega popular. Slight difference with this movie is the book hasn't actually come out yet, but one of his friends gets an advanced copy of it. Throughout the course of this movie, various people read various parts of this book, and things from their youth that none of them knew about each other are exposed and cause drama during a weekend that everybody's supposed to be getting together for a wedding. So like Best Man's kind of non-linear. It doesn't have a whole lot of non-linear stuff going on, but there are a lot of flashbacks to their not a lot. There are some flashbacks to things that went on when the characters were younger. Like I said, they are now all getting together for the wedding of one of the characters who was like a huge womanizer when he was growing up, but he's finally decided to settle down. Kind of goes through how he met the character that he's marrying, the things that she went through before they actually became a couple. I mean, even after they became a couple, he still was sleeping around and cheating on her. So it kind of goes into how she dealt with that when they were younger. Um, we get back into the present and we see a lot of fallout from a lot of the things that happened when all these characters were kids. So like it's exactly my kind of thing. It's structured narratively in a way that I really enjoy. It plays out it has moments of humor, it has moments of friendship and drama and like being there for each other and forgiveness. There's some really good scenes, in the third act of this movie where friendships are tested and I don't know. It's one of those movies that since the day I watched it, I really enjoyed it. Actually, a couple of years ago, I actually rewatched this because in 2013 they also made a sequel called Best Man Holiday. Rewatched that it's been like 2 years now. Because in 2022 they did a limited TV series called The Best Man: The Final Chapters, which was like an 8-part, limited time event, which I watched both of these movies to prepare myself to watch the TV show, and still to this day, 2 years later, I didn't make time to watch the TV show. After talking about how much I love the movie right now, I really need to get off my butt and go make that happen. The Best Man has an amazing cast, like one of the greatest casts that's ever been put together in a film. We have Taye Diggs, Morris Chestnut, Harold Perrineau, Terrence Howard, Nia Long, and the absolutely gorgeous and stunning Sanaa Lathan, who will be in Love and Basketball next year, which I absolutely, can't stop talking about how much I love Love and Basketball and how many of the characters from that movie played great roles in 1999 also. This movie deserved to be number one. I can't recommend it enough. Um, Absolutely amazing. So out of all the crap that we got in this week, we do have one absolutely amazing movie that came out, hit number one as it should have. Whew. So there we go. Just talked about seven movies. Again, not a super short episode, but I didn't go on a lot of tangents, I don't think. Next week, we are back with a regular 3-movie weekend, two of which are art house movies, and the third of which is the crappy remake of House on Haunted Hill, which I literally just rewatched a week or two ago because it's part of my 31 days of horror films in Halloween, where I try to watch a horror movie every day through the month of Halloween. Wanted to give that one a reshot, and it sucks. It still sucks. It has Taye Diggs in it, so we got Taye Diggs in two movies back to back weekends. That didn't help this crappy movie. We'll talk more about that next week.